now?
No. It'll take a minute.
Oh, it should push your button. It's green. It's green? I still don't have it. Is the microphone turned off? Let's
Not
try.
in late, you need to hold your button down.
Hold your butt down.
It's green. Like this.
Is yours completely off?
This is all
Yes.
down.
Well,
No light off?
oh, it's red.
Okay, hold it until it goes all the way off.
I think, now can you hear me? Now,
Say something.
I'm off. Hello? Okay. I spend summers in Alaska, and like the snow geese, I come back here for winter. And I'm really honored to be here, so thank you very much. And because I was a little worried, I brought a lot of my friends with me from my dance community, and they're going to help me too. It's kind of my way of passing off the burden a little bit. What's that?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to start off with a Hafiz poem. So here we have to know, ready? Okay. God and I have become like two giant fat people living in a tiny boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing. You may have heard that before. Now, Hafiz is spelled two different ways. It's also pronounced many different ways. And I pronounce it Hafiz because I have a Kurdish friend, and she said her father, back in the day, 80 years ago, would read Hafiz every night. And that's how she said it. This is in Kirkuk. That's where he would read Hafiz. And I'm going to tell you a lot more about him. Okay, when was the last time you bumped into the divine and laughed? This little nugget of a poem is 600 plus years old. It was written by Hafiz. Now, I was raised Lutheran, and there weren't too many jokes in that church until Garrison Keeler came along. Okay. Hafiz takes a different view of laughter in church. His deity is lighthearted. Hafiz's relationship with God isn't something apart from him, but is integral to who he is. Now, speaking of God, I'm a little hesitant to use the term in a CSL fellowship because some of you might be uncomfortable with the word. But as Garrison Keeler might say, everyone sings, "Praise be to whom it may concern." Do I believe in God? Do you believe in God? Some people personify God as a bearded man in a white robe. Others have difficulty even using the word God and might prefer divinity or goddess. I believe in a type of cosmic energy that's everywhere and in everyone and in everything I do. I call this unknowable energy God, as Hafiz does. Now, as a child in the Lutheran Church, I delighted in earning those glow-in-the-dark crosses for memorizing Scripture. I'd line them up and you turn the light off and they glow in the dark as you go to sleep. My real God, though, was the ever-powerful, ever-present, overwhelming person in my life, my Father. Daddy had a lively sense of humor, and here he is in his Martian-catching outfit. He entertained us in many different ways. He delighted in corny jokes and nearly always had a ready smile. My role model related to the world with laughter. Now, I carried Daddy with me for many years. In college, my nickname was Chortle, which is chuckle and snort. Then I walked out into the greater world, and it became much harder to laugh. Chortle faded away amid death, divorce, troublesome, challenging jobs, humbling child rearing. I didn't catch a glimpse of Chortle until my children were gone, and I had the freedom to find the dances of universal peace. There, my body found prayer in movement and a community with lots of laughter. When I discovered Hafiz, it was a homecoming for me. His combination of humor with his relationship to the divine spoke immediately to me. Also, I do relate to the mystical aspects of Hafiz, a Sufi master. He had an intimate relationship with God that he called the beloved, the hidden, the friend. Just like Frankl in God's Search for Meaning, Hafiz saw divinity as being beyond the understanding of human reason. Here's a quote. Pulling out the chair beneath your mind and watching you fall upon God. What else is there for Hafiz to do that is any fun in the world? I told you I couldn't have my friends help me. So does this mean I have to turn off this to turn on this?
No.
No, I shouldn't have to. Star, could you read this twice, please?
I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, how are you? I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, what is God? If you think that truth can be known from words, if you think that the sun and the ocean can pass through that tiny opening called the mouth, oh, someone should start laughing. Someone should start wildly laughing right now.
Yes, that's next. As you can see, the poetry of Hafiz differs distinctly from those who believe that all knowledge can be found within reason. Sufis, like Hafiz, are mystics who believe the doorway through the divine is not through reason, but through the heart. And this is the Sufi symbol, the flying winged heart. Okay, are you second? Okay.
If God invited you to a party and said, everyone in the ballroom tonight will be my special guest, how would you then treat them when they arrived? Indeed, indeed, and I know there is no one in this world who is not upon his jeweled dance floor. If God invited you to a party and said, everyone in the ballroom tonight will be my special guest, how would you then treat them when you arrived? Indeed, indeed, and I know there is no one in this world who is not upon his jeweled dance floor.
As you can see, inclusion is a very strong value for Hafiz. Another value is kindness.
What we speak becomes the house we live in. Who will want to sleep in your bed if the roof leaks right above it? Look what happens when the tongue cannot say to kindness, I will be your slave. The moon covers her face with both hands and can't bear to look. What we speak becomes the house we live in. Who will want to sleep in your bed if the roof leaks right above it? Look what happens when the tongue cannot say to kindness, I will be your slave. The moon covers her face with both hands and can't bear to look.
Thank you. Now, these poems, this is all about laughter, so the poems are rather serious, even though he talks about laughter. So I want to tell you an old joke from Islam. This joke is hundreds of years old. And it's about a man named Nasruddin, who was kind of like the holy fool. And so he got his message across by being kind of silly in ways. And here's one of my favorite ones. Nasruddin and two friends were walking down the road, and they saw a funeral procession. And when it went by, the first man said, oh, when it's time for my funeral, I want people to remember me and to say that I was a really kind man. that everybody I was kind to. And the second man said, oh yeah, I want to be remembered at my funeral too. I would like to have people say at my funeral that I was a very fair man, that everybody I met I treated very equally. And they looked at Nasruddin and they said, Nasruddin, what do you want people to say at your funeral? Nasruddin said, I want them to say, look, he's moving. Okay, let's get back to Hafiz. He also had a very liberal view of gender.
Once a young woman asked me, how does it feel to be a man? And I replied, my dear, I'm not so sure. Then she said, well, aren't you a man? At this time I replied, I view gender as a beautiful animal that people often take for a walk on a leash and might enter in some odd contest to try to win strange prizes. My dear, a better question for Hafiz would be, how does it feel to be a heart? For all I know is love, and I find my heart infinite and everywhere. I'll repeat this. Once a young woman asked me, how does it feel to be a man? And I replied, my dear, I'm not so sure. Then she said, well, aren't you a man? And this time I replied, I view gender as a beautiful animal that people often take for a walk on a leash and might enter in some odd contest to try to win strange prizes. My dear, a better question for Hafiz would have been, how does it feel to be a heart? For all I know is love, and I find my heart infinite and everywhere.
Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit more about Hafiz. His given name is Shams Ud Din Muhammad. He lived in the 14th century in what is now Shiraz, Iran, where the wine originated. About 500 of his poems still exist. He was a contemporary of Chaucer. He lived a century after Rumi, the Sufi poet who is most famous in the West. Goethe helped make him famous in Western culture. Ralph Waldo Emerson, a one-time Unitarian minister, translated some of his poetry into English. Brahms put some of his words into his compositions. Queen Victoria supposedly consulted his works. In Arthur Conan Doyle's work, Sherlock Holmes quoted Hafiz. Now, Sufis are one of the most liberal sects of Islam. When I was in Morocco, I asked a Muslim friend what he knew about the Sufis. He said, he scoffed. Sufis are crazy for love. This is not a usual topic for Islamic study. For Hafiz, though, love and laughter aren't crazy. Okay. Jump back. Thank you.
What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved has just made such a fantastic move that the saint is now continually tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, I surrender. Whereas, my dear, I am afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved has just made such a fantastic move that the saint is now continually tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, I surrender. Whereas, my dear, I am afraid you still think
You have 1,000 serious moves.
Yeah. I still think I have some of those serious moods, and sometimes that's all I can think of is the seriousness. But let's go away from that. Why did the person from CSL cross the road with a chicken?
Why?
Okay, the person from CSL crossed the road with a chicken because she wanted to support the chicken in its search for its own path. Hafiz would probably have been one of the last people to insist he had the path figured out. But he had a million interesting questions and one enlightened vision of unity and love. So I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite ones. It's called I Got Kin, like K-I-N, like relatives. I've got relatives, I've got kin. It says, plant so that your own heart will grow. Love so that God will think. Ah, I got kin in that body. I should start inviting that soul over for coffee and rolls. Sing, because this is a food our starving world needs. Laugh, because that is the purest sound. One more time. Plant so that your own heart will grow. Love so that God will think, ah, I got kin in that body. I should start inviting that soul over for coffee and rolls. Sing, because this is a food that our starving world needs. Laugh, because that is the purest sound. So thank all of you. Thank you for letting me come. And I'll say thank you.
Another song?
And I invite you to stand on this one. This is a song we all know from our childhood. I've got that joy, joy, joy. We're going to do 3 verses. You don't have the word, I don't think, but we all know this. The first verse, I've got that joy, 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 joy down in my heart. And the second verse is, I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. And the last verse is, I've got the love of spirit